The UK Prime Minister announced April 2022 that everybody knows energy bills have been increasing around the world. This statement implying that the huge cost of living rise in the United Kingdom is part of a global crisis that his government could do nothing about. However, this quite typical sleight of hand concealed the more objective point of view that in fact much of the increase in energy costs and the general cost of living in the UK is a direct result of the huge financial commitments made by Mr. Johnson and the UK Chancellor Rishi Sunak at the NetZero COP26 Conference November 2021. Those commitments were made on top of the enormous costs to the taxpayer already incurred during the lockdowns. These costs involved poor management, financial naivety and fraud. During his COP26 speech, Mr. Johnson referred to the Paris Agreement, adopted by 196 parties at COP21 in Paris on 12 December 2015 and entered into force on 4 November 2016, where a commitment was made by all parties to find funds of $100 billion to help the rest of the world to move to green technology. The UK Chancellor made a similar promise during his speech on November 3, 2021, to deliver the promise made in Paris 6 years ago to direct the world's wealth to protect our planet. We can now look at just how much future financial commitments were pledged at COP26 and how much has already been laid out during the pandemic. We start by looking at the Chancellor's speech at COP26. Chancellor Sunak opened his speech by establishing his climate change expertise when he stated that it's easy to feel daunted by the scale of the challenge we face. By sea levels rising, droughts and wildfires spreading, people forced out of their homes. But he still felt optimistic because this is the first COP to bring together so many of the world's finance ministers, businesses and investors with such a clear common purpose: to deliver the promise made in Paris 6 years ago, to direct the world's wealth to protect our planet. It's why the IMF are providing a new $650 billion allocation of special drawing rights, and it's why we are going to meet the target to provide $100 billion of climate finance to developing countries. Over the next 5 years, we will deliver a total of $500 billion investment to the countries that need it most. And he says we can do more today. He announced that the United Kingdom will commit £100 million to the Task Force on Access to Climate Finance. And the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero had brought together financial organisations with assets worth over $130 trillion. He finishes with the globalist dream to rewire the entire global financial system for net zero. This aspiration exactly accords with the World Economic Forum desire to bring about a great reset of capitalism. The Chancellor went on to say that the UK will become the first ever net zero aligned financial centre. This means, he said, we are going to move forwards, making it mandatory for firms to publish a clear deliverable plan, setting out how they will decarbonise and transition to net zero, with an independent task force to define what's required. He wraps up by saying that we are talking about making a tangible difference to people's lives, about cheap, reliable and clean electricity to power schools and hospitals in rural Africa, about better coastal defences in the Philippines and the Pacific Islands, to protect people from storm surges. But there is a question to ask. When he talks about making a tangible difference to people's lives, what about the UK? What are the tangible differences that will be made to the lives of the people of the United Kingdom? 5 months after the speeches of Johnson and Sunak at COP26, we are getting a pretty good idea of the tangible differences being made. In its latest forecasts, published 23 March 2022, the Office for Budget Responsibility forecasts CPI inflation to peak at 8.7% in Q4 2022 and be above 7% in each quarter from Q2 2022 to Q1 2023. This is much higher than the peak of 4.4% that was forecast in October 2021 before the COP26 speeches. And for the fiscal year 2022-23, the OBR forecasts CPI inflation to average 8%, more than double its previous forecast of 3.7%. The OBR also reports that energy prices are pushing inflation higher. This is a fact known to everyone that pays for gas, petrol and electricity. But the government's response is quite irresponsible. As one example of the tangible differences to people's lives, it is imposing a plan to replace gas and electric boilers with heat pumps, which could cost £115 billion. To summarise, we come back to the Paris Agreement and the United Nations Agenda 2030. It is clear from both men's speeches that their primary objective is to implement the net zero aims of the Paris Agreement and the United Nations Agenda 2030. It is also clear that these politicians are attempting to deliver a globalist and New World Order strategy, even though that will result in the people that have elected them to power suffering enormous collateral damage. The historically evil reason for this rationale is that they believe, or it suits them to believe, that this damage is for the greater good. We must also not forget that the UK citizen suffered enormous collateral damage for the supposedly greater good during the COVID-19 lockdowns. In June 2021, the Department for Business estimated the Bounce Back Loan Scheme could cost the taxpayer £27 billion in fraud or credit losses. And in November 2021, it was reported that the furlough scheme had suffered a loss of around £5.2 billion due to fraud. But the biggest issue this video wishes to highlight is the globalist pursuit by both the UK Prime Minister and the UK Chancellor to implement the Paris Agreement goal, which is to secure global net zero, and which goes hand in hand with the United Nations Agenda 2030 to transform the world, no matter any adverse impact that has on the citizens of the United Kingdom. This channel, this community, has vigorously opposed the Paris Agreement. We firmly are of the opinion that the West is at war with a chaotic form of globalism that is intent on replacing national democracies and liberties with a global autocracy. We believe the globalist aims are in fact naive to the point of madness, but are existentially dangerous to the nations of the West. We also believe that the implementation of the NetZero Paris Agreement could be the last battle in that war. But it is a battle we can win. To do so, we must first resist and eventually disband the visible prey that is the World Economic Forum and its members, leaving the powers behind the World Economic Forum to a later stage. This is to protect the West from globalist blunders that are based on a globalist fanaticism and nonsensical claims. This community combines the topics of climate change, COVID-19 and the New World Order. If you would like to join our community, you can find us on locals.com. The New World Order. This link will take you directly to our site.